No.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
It's delayed. Excellent.
Oh,
Well,
sorry.
once again, friends, welcome. If you are just joining on, I know we're going to have some people.
I thought my
kinda-
Bluetooth was on, but it wasn't.
I think we're going to have people coming in as we go. Just wanted to welcome you to COCA-I's Gold Ribbon Visitor Training. A couple things just as far as housekeeping goes. If you haven't already, if you could pop in and chat and put in your name there, that would just help us from a record keeping point of view. Also, if you, and hopefully we've all learned and sometimes forget that we do it, can you put yourself on mute just in case the dog comes in or my maintenance guy comes in and asks me something? You don't have to hear it all. And we'll kind of go through and do that. So I would appreciate both of those. And yeah, so we're going to run through. A matter of fact, I was chatting with this team. Well, actually, I'll let everybody say hi to Jennifer. You know, our executive director, Jennifer. And Jennifer, why don't you say hi to everybody? And I know you have an introduction. We'll start with that.
Yeah, I'm so excited to introduce all of you to Callie Campbell, COCA's new program manager. She is going to be helping us with all of the accreditation visits, working with the visitors and all the camps very closely. So you're going to love working with Callie. So say hello. Oh, Brian, I think.
There we go.
Okay.
Cool. Well, a couple of housekeeping things. Just wanted to let you know. I see we have a great group of individuals here that you're coming to help us visit for this summer. And by the way, thank you, thank you, thank you. It seems like we're really starting to roll out for visits this summer. I know the past few summers have either been not at all or trials and tribulations to support our camps in this. So I appreciate you coming forward. I will say that this training, even though it maybe looks like a new background, it's a lot of the same. We're working with the same standards that we were doing in 2019. We do have a revision that we're working on right now. Won't be kind of ready until fall. But a matter of fact, we were even talking administratively that maybe in the future, it might be that we have visitor updates rather than everybody going through the training. But I'm going to take this opportunity to invite all of you. If you've been visitors before, please chime in. Please take yourself off mute. Please add your nuggets of knowledge that might help those of us that are new visitors as we're kind of going into this, as we go through this orientation and kind of move forward, because that will make us stronger and better visitors for our camp. So I just wanted to make that invitation as we kind of go through and do that. All right. If you do, and to everybody that's on this, even if you're new, questions, need clarifications, have that kind of thing, please chime in. You can either unmute, chime in. You can also go on chat if you'd like to. I'm not really good at presenting and then looking at chat, so I got friends here to do that. And while they're presenting, then I'll look at chat. But if we don't see your chat, chime in. We love to hear voices and to kind of make that thing happen. All right. Cool. Well, let's kick this little adventure off. As I always like to do, is I always like to make sure that we're kind of on the same page with regards to what Gold Ribbon Accreditation is. And this is a lot of words. Don't worry, I'm going to kind of break it down. I want to say also, just for your knowledge as a visitor, a lot of these slides we've also just done with camps that are seeking to be accredited. So they've seen very similar, with maybe some things out that are visitor specific. But you're seeing the same thing. So it's pretty much we're sharing the same information. So I wanted to let you know that. So what is accreditation? Just real quick, the biggest part and the one that I really want to make sure that we all kind of embody and think about is that accreditation is an education program. As much as it might look like it's an inspection or those kind of things, really from a COCA point of view, it's all about education. It's educating our camps with regards to foundational practices. It's educating our camps with regards to how to take a look at the programs and the procedures and those kind of things that they do in supporting their campers, whether or not that's kids, siblings, adults, caregivers, those kind of things. So I really want to say is as you go out as a visitor, you're really there to help to support the education process that these camps have actually gone through and continue to go through. The other piece is that with accreditation, we're really looking specifically at policies, practices, and procedures with regards to how they operate their programs, and to make sure that they're specific to their setting and to their population. And by setting, I mean some camps are right near hospitals. They might be in the city if they're day camps. They might, people have different things. Some might be awfully remote or even off on islands, all kinds of different places, because we have such a robust group of members. But the policies, practices, and procedures need to be specific to their setting, and then once again to their population. Because with their population, we say patients as kind of a general big bucket, but patients and those that are eligible to come to our different COCA member camps might vary. There may be some kinds of support that patients need that can go to, Dave Smith's camp, and there's certain that then those I wouldn't take at my camp because we can't support them appropriately. So it just depends. So you need to know, and all these procedures and practices need to be specific to that population. That also includes that we might have siblings at camp or do a sibling camps. And so if you have siblings, what their care needs, as we've discovered, is very sometimes different than what our patient population need is. And then I'll even add into that that if we do family camps, we also have adults and we also have staff. So all of our procedures and our practices should make sure that they adhere to those different populations. So that's what we need there. So as a visitor, I just ask you to really have conversations with the camps with regards to defining what their populations are, define what their setting is, and as we said to them, is that they use that lens as they develop and improve and enhance their practices, procedures related to the standards. The other piece that I wanted to put here is accreditation. The reason that this can be what we call an accreditation process is because it involves documentation, and it also involves being able to verify that they're delivering those practices, those policies in their day-to-day camp operation. And we do that because of you. So having you folks be visitors, you guys are going to be reviewing documentation to make sure if it answers the 28 standards that we have. And then when you go to visit the camp, that you'll actually be able to see some of those in action. And you are not attached to that camp, have interest in that camp, and because that's that third party kind of verification, we can call it accreditation. Questions about any of that? Okay. So these two quick slides I'll go over real quickly, but I just like to clarify and let you know that we did this with the camps as well. That accreditation standards, what they are, is they're really with regards to foundational elements. Please know that I kind of put foundational in there. Lots of times we talk about best practices, but there are many of our camps that do above and beyond a certain procedure or practice that COCA asks about because they just want to improve what they do and how they serve their group. But the ones that are, and they might do more in depth, but the ones that we have here in standards for Gold Ribbon really talk about the kind of the agreed upon foundational elements to a safe program. The other thing is, once again, they go over the practice, policies, and implementation within a pediatric oncology camping scope. And once again, the verified third-party observation. Thank you, that would be you. The note that I put down here too is just to be aware, and it's kind of rolling into the logo, but is that when these standards were written and the way that we look at them from a COCA visitor point of view is we're really looking at overnight camp programs and day camps. So overnight camps can be weekends, they can be family camps, they can be week-long camps. That's really it. They weren't really written in the context of a single day event, like a holiday party or something that's held in the community, or even a hospital program. Many of our members have hospital programs in the hospital, and we haven't bitten that off yet, so to speak. But what I can say is from a Gold Ribbon standards point of view, is that many of them might be applicable. And therefore, if you're a member camp, we've suggested, hey, take a look at standards and see what applies to your day event, to your hospital programs, as far as the safety for your participants and for your staff. The other one that what accreditation standards are not, and that this is important too, is that for our camps is you guys aren't going out there to say, this is how you do it. This is what you should be doing with regards to your policies or practices. But what it does is it asks what the camp, what they do, and we ask you to review to make sure that what they say they do meets the different kind of questions that we ask for in a standard. And what that really means is that we as COCA and as Gold Road, we're not prescribing their practice, telling them what to do. Now, sometimes this lens might be hard because as a visitor, I know that I run camp in a certain way. I go to another camp and say, well, you don't do it the way I do it. And that's where I ask visitors to take a stop before when they have those kind of thoughts and say, well, they may not do it the way I do it, but are they meeting the standard? That's the question we ask visitors to do. Are what they do and what they say they're going to do meet the criteria of the standards, even though there might be a different practice or policy that we might have in the camps or the practices that we come from. Okay, questions? Bam. Real quick, benefits of the Gold Ribbon program. This is something just you to be aware of because it's, once again, it's that kind of presence we like to ask, because you are actually representing COCA as you go out and, well, even as you review documentation and interface with our camp, but also as you go out. And one of those is, as I said earlier, it's an education program that's really here to inform and educate. We're constantly taking a look at new improvements. By the way, I will say that feedback from our camps with regards to the standards or questions, as well as from our visitors for clarification or those kind of things, are always helpful as we take a look and update and revise. As a matter of fact, like I said, we're working on a revision right now, and some issues are taking, would that be a standard? Do we need to change a standard, or is it just an education piece we need to do? But overall, accreditation is an education program. The other piece is that we really want to make sure that, or we hope that in planning camp programs, that for those that run their camps, that having written policies, procedures, and practice kind of help them. Number one is to be consistent for the safety and the care of their kids, also to train their staff, whether or not it's medical staff, cabin staff, those kind of things, that everyone's on the same page with regards to how they do it. And it kind of institutionalizes the different safety aspects and medical aspects, those kind of things with regards to their camps. And so if they do more than one session, that maybe it's the same over different sessions. If they just do one, then next year they can take a look at their practices and it can be the basis of evaluation and improvement or change, depending on external factors or experiences or those kind of things going on. But what it does is, and that's the education piece, but also it provides confidence. At least we have something in place. And that if there was a change or those kind of things, or if there's someone new in, they know what the procedures, practices are for that camp. They can see them written as well as being told and how they move forward. The other piece is also with regards to stature. We hope that accreditation would be something that could be shared by their camps. They can tell their parents, donors, community members, hospital partners, those kind of things, that they are, they care enough about these kids that we're supporting and serving and their families, that they've sought voluntarily to be accredited on foundational standards by an outside group. And that, if you're going for money from a donor, if you're going to a hospital, if you're even talking to parents, it's one of those things that we hope that they can communicate and therefore will look better for the camp, or would be more attractive, or at least provide them with some credibility. Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Gold Ribbon process. So the process, just for you to know, I'll run through this. Camps that looking to be accredited this year have filled out applications November and December. They're also going through orientation. We just had one yesterday. We'll be doing 2 more. And like I said, it's kind of similar to this, just so we're all on the same page. Those are mandatory for those camps that are looking to be accredited for this year. We asked them to start submitting their documentation for review on a portal. We'll talk more about the portal a little bit later, but we asked them to get their paperwork together and try to get that in by April 1st. So we've got about a month for them to kind of work on that rather than saying, hey, it needs to be due tomorrow. We ask a visiting team then to review those documents. We ask for that documentation to be reviewed and complete until June. So we're giving visitors really that April to June to review. You'll be assigned to a camp. That will be happening shortly. And once you're assigned to a camp, then going through their documentation, having conversations with the camp if you're looking for additional documentation or clarification, but that all that documentation has been reviewed by June 1st. We like to do that because we want to make sure that when there's an in-person visit, that paperwork is taken care of. That really you're there to see what they do and to verify they're doing what they said they were going to do, is the intent. And so to have that documentation ahead of time. Visits right now are June through August. We hope in the future to maybe be able to expand that so we can do fall and spring camps, just as the number of camps wishing to be accredited increases and continues, that we could go and see whether or not that's a winter weekend, whether or not it's a family camp, or those kind of things and accredit there. But for right now, for the case of this summer, we're looking June through August, unless we hear otherwise. The one thing, and this is a note for all of you, I'll talk about it a couple times. We ask for at the end of your visit, whenever you go to a camp and you actually visit, we ask that about 2 weeks after that visit, that at least you submit a report about that visit. We'll talk a little bit about what that report looks like. There's even a piece of paper in the standards that is a visitor kind of report form. That way, we can start getting those back in and processing those. And by processing those, it means that internally we're going to review those. If there's any discrepancies with regards to if a standard has been met, we can start having those conversations. But submitting that report is very, very helpful. And we'll talk more about that. To let you know that the reason we submit those reports is those actually go to the staff and then also will then be reported to the Gold Ribbon Committee. And I know I have a couple committee members on this call, so once again, chime in on all this. But I want to let you know that those reports then go to the committee, and that committee then makes recommendations to the COCA board with regards to awarding accreditation. The reason this is important is, as we've told camps, visitors do not, you don't have the ability, and sometimes that's misunderstood by the camps, but it's not within your purview to award accreditation. You're there to visit and report. So it takes some of the pressure off of you. And so, because I know lots of camps said, well, gosh, Liz was out to our camp on Thursday, so Friday, are we accredited? It's kind of like, not yet. That really there's a report going through. As that report goes through, and those, like I said, in October are usually then awarded for the upcoming year. And the committee doesn't even award accreditations. That's all according to the board. Okay. Questions about that, I should say, or comments about that. Okay. So key to an accreditation program success. This is what we found over our years. One of the biggest successes to this program is communication. This is communication between visitors and the office. This is between visitors and the camps they're visiting, between the camps that are visiting and their visitors. All of this has to be the most important thing. And I know that we all have busy, most of us have maybe other jobs that we do. We don't just do accreditation because it's a volunteer thing. It may be camp, it may be hospital, it may be something else. But that communication and timely communication going back and forth is really important. And that leads me to the second point of success and the third point of success. Yes, communication, communication, communication. Where we find that we can do that, that we have a lot of, it really runs a lot smoother. Even in making arrangements on when we're arriving at a camp, how we get there, we'll talk about that all later. But the more rapport and communication you can do with your camp, as a visitor, all the better. And if you seem to be running into struggles, and I know as a visitor myself, sometimes I've had a struggle with their communication because they're busy trying to get stuff to me or to respond, reach out to the staff of COCA, reach out to Callie, reach out to Jennifer, you can even reach out to me, and we'll try to help facilitate that just to make sure, number one, is everything's okay. And number two is that to promote, once again, this key to success. Okay. Some of the points with regards to communication, just to help you out, because I know in the past, sometimes visitors think, can we have a checklist of what we really ought to make sure to do? Yep, here's kind of a quick checklist. By the way, I'll take a pause and say, you're going to be receiving this, this presentation, both in PowerPoint and also in a PDF, just as a reference for you. So you can use it as you will. But once again, one of the things is communication between the camp representative and the visitors once you find out which camp or camps you'll be visiting. The thing that we find is as early on to be able to select the best date for the visit. Many of our member camps may only operate for 1 week. As a visitor, you might go in there and say, oh, hey, we try to screen that ahead of time, but maybe there's some glitch in that. It's like, I'm not going to be available on that date. Or
You know that guy? Yeah, he's a good friend of mine.
I'm not going to be available there. And so communicating that will allow us then, if we need to actually exchange or substitute visitors or add visitors in, so it'll work. So selecting a date when the camp is going to be there. Now, the thing about when the camp is going to be operating is important. We want to make sure that at the camp that most of the activities will be observable. Not every activity, but we don't want them going out on hike day and all being out at camp that day, the day of the visit. But making sure that there are some things that we can see, especially medical services can be observed, medications being given, treatments or band-aids put on, whatever. But that can actually be observed during your visit. We also want to make sure that during your visit that we have a camp director there. Camp director is kind of an interesting term. Everybody uses different terms. This is really the person from the member camp that has gone through and organized the Gold Ribbon program, is aware of what all the standards are, submitting the documentation. It may be an assistant director, it may be a board member, it may be the camp director. I don't know which, but somebody there that's knowledgeable about that can speak to you as visitors as you go there and have questions. And that's the same thing with the camp healthcare staff. We put down here MDRN, but really it can be whoever maybe is the charge person medically at that session, that they're there for you to have a conversation. Some camps, they only have them available maybe on phone, or they're only there a day or two, or those kind of things. But really for the visit, we want to make sure they're there so that we can ask questions, we can see what they do, and we can judge whether or not, once again, according to the standards, they're meeting those policies and procedures. So in selecting a visit date, those are the things to really kind of hone in on. First off, to make sure that the date is okay. The next thing is also about getting to the camp. We are trying to, as much as we can, to try to get visitors as close to camps as possible, but sometimes that's not. So sometimes they have to fly in. So it's kind of like, where's the closest airport to the camp facility? And by the way, as visitors, we do, due to the care and support of care camps as a philanthropy, they help fund the Gold Ribbon program. So we reimburse for flights, we reimburse if you need a car, we do those kind of things. If you need a place to stay, we will reimburse. To be good stewards of that philanthropy, we try once again to try to get visitors as close to camps as possible. We're working on that. But to find out from the camp during your communication, what would be that closest fly-in place if you do need to fly in? Also, with regards to talking to the camp, can they provide rides from the airport to the camp or from the airport? Or do you need to take a ferry over to an island? We have all kinds of camps running into, I put rocket ship down there, don't worry, there's no celestial camps yet. But you never know what that transportation is going to need to be. So once again, just kind of work out these details. And we also have asked camps if they can help out to provide rides. That's great. Instead of having our visitors rent a car, you can, we will reimburse, but I just wanted to say that we ask camps to help out with that if they can. So that's not a shock to them as well. The other piece that we ask for too is if, depending on the timing of your visit and where you're coming from, it might be a flight in beforehand or travel beforehand to get there early enough, or it might be staying afterwards. And so with those accommodations, we've also asked camps, hey, can you help us with budget? Do you have an accommodation at camp that would be adult appropriate, not in a cabin with kids, but that they could stay for a night either before or afterwards? So just ask that question. If not, totally understand. We don't want to be in the way as COCA, and we'll definitely put people up for a night and those kind of things in hotels, and that kind of a thing. But it's worthy to have as part of your conversation checklist. Also, one of the things we ask, and we've done this with camp, is can the camp offer meals to visitors for the visit? So it might go over a lunchtime, it might go to dinner, I don't know, however you guys decide that timing. But ask whether or not the camp can do that. And also for our visitors is to make sure that your fuel intake needs of meals can be taken care of. And if there's special meal requests and needs and those kind of things, those are talked about ahead of time, because we don't want to get there. It might be, hey, pick something up on the way to camp to make sure that you have enough fuel to make it through the visit. But we should have that conversation ahead of time. And then the last is still COVID procedures. They're still hanging on for us. So to have a conversation with the camp as far as what are they asking for as far as COVID safety protocols with regards to vaccinations, testing on the day, all those kinds of things. Have that conversation ahead of time. As a visitor, if you don't feel comfortable, can't comply with that, once again, let staff know. We'll find somebody to kind of change out with y'all to make sure that as COCA, and that number one is our visitors are taken care of and safe, but also the member camp and the campers that they have, that we're adhering and keeping a safe population for them. I will say that if camps are operating in a bubble, that they let us know. That way that we'll just kind of put them forward on a docket for another year. Hopefully we'll get out of bubbling for those that still determine that they would like to bubble, and we can visit them at another time. So this is a real quick kind of communication checklist. Any questions about that? Any suggestions or other thoughts with regards to that for those of you who've done this before?
I had a question from earlier, but I didn't find the mute button fast enough to mute myself.
I'm glad you found it now.
On that timeline there, the two main portions that we needed to be focused on for homework was between April and June for review of camp documents submitted, and this is from the visitor's perspective, and then the 2 weeks immediately following the visit, correct?
I would say that's correct, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And I would also say that during that April and June is also the communication with camps and making arrangements.
Yeah.
That would be the other ticket point. That would be the other clicker point I would put in there, to besides just the documentation. That's really the key communication time, to make sure that that's all settled. You know where you are. You can let the office know. Great, we've got the date chosen. We know how we're getting there. We're all that. But yes, that's a great insight, Harry. Great question.
Thanks.
Any
I
other?
had a comment also that I was going to make about something that you said earlier, in line with the fact that education is one of our primary objectives, and communication is a key part of how we do all of that. You brought up the situation where you are watching a camp do something, and the thought that comes into your head is, "Ooh, that's not the way I do that." I would see that as an opportunity for education that can go both directions. I know I've often learned something from another camp that I was visiting that was really cool, that I thought we could definitely bring back and incorporate some or all of that into our program. And so it does give you an opportunity to have a conversation about the fact that there's not just one way of doing things, and you know, we can both learn from that conversation. You just need to be careful, as Brian said, what the standard, what the judgment ultimately is going to be is whether the camp meets the standard, and not whether they do it the way you think maybe they should, or the best way that you think it could be done. So make sure that in that discussion you don't come on as, well, I'm the visitor and this is the way we do it. Right. So clearly you should do it that way, even if you don't. Yeah. But if you just can have a casual conversation, it can be a good opportunity for education and learning.
That's a great insight, Mike. I would definitely agree with you. And I would say too, is if you are questioning whether or not it's kind of like, so do they meet the standard? Is this just my way of doing things, or is this the way the COCA is? That's where myself, staff can be available on the visit. Step away, give us a call to do that, because we want to help to make sure, especially if it's your first time through or you're just kind of seeing what's going on, to make sure that that's clear. And worst comes to worst, if after the visit it's still unsure, we'll bring people together and we'll have that conversation to make sure that we can add to that education piece and that communication piece as we go on. But those, Mike, those are great thoughts. Yeah. And I would also add to that is that you might see other things. It might be they're doing underwater basket weaving as an activity. And you're saying, gosh, I don't know if I would operate it that way. This is once again one of those things where you can have a conversation. It's not a standard, but it's a great collegial conversation to be able to say, tell me about that. Hey, have you ever thought about this? And when I look at that, oh, that's really, how is that you can learn? Perhaps they can too. And we've also shared that with camps, that if they have questions about underwater basket weaving, it's not a part of the standards, but we've let them know that there are some great resources coming to visit them. And if they have that burning question on the side, definitely ask that. This is one of those wonderful opportunities to have really great people on both sides, from our camps and our visitors, all in one place, face to face.
So I just have a quick question. I'm assuming that you try to pair somebody who's done a visit before with somebody who's coming on brand new.
We do our best. We're still a growing program. And we also have to kind of juggle all of those. So we will definitely do our best. And that's one of the things why we like to have two visitors, because a peer visitor and a medical visitor, we can kind of balance those through as well. But we can't necessarily in every situation, but we'll be there to support you.
And then I guess we haven't gotten to the reporting yet, but will you provide some examples of maybe some other, maybe try to make it confidential, but some examples of other reports that have been submitted just for some guidance for us newbies?
Yeah, I will share. We will share with you what that report is, and it's pretty basic. But yes, let's get back to that question, Susie, so we can definitely feel comfortable about that.
Perfect.
Good one.
Thanks.
Yeah, another question. Have any of you experienced a situation where there was a unsafe moment where you felt like you needed to say something? And if you did, how did that go?
That's an interesting question. The ACA has a policy. There are certain mandatory standards. If you see something that doesn't meet one of those standards, then you're supposed to tell them to stop that program until the issue is resolved. And we haven't talked about a similar kind of approach to a situation that looks like it's unsafe. We should probably talk more specifically about that. But I think certainly it would need to be mentioned if you saw something that you thought was putting campers at risk. That opinion would need to be expressed, I think, for the safety of everybody involved. We haven't talked about whether we have the authority to actually tell them to stop doing something.
Yeah, and so I agree. And Cindy, just to kind of let you know, I mean, I'm trying to imagine what that might be. As we said, we haven't kind of incurred that yet, but let's just say if there is a boating activity and they're doing swamping of something and there's no life preservers on any kids, there's no lifeguards, probably that would be the thing where I would pull the director off to the side and say, tell me what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I look at, a climbing wall where someone's not wearing a helmet.
Right, and that's why I pull them aside and say, hey, this is nothing to do with the accreditation standard. This is parent and camp director to another camp director.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this might be something that maybe you ought to explore and look into, because I'm not sure that's safe. And I would hate to see that for the camp, that there would be an incident or there would be injury, and plus what comes after that for an organization with regards to negligence and liability. And so I just wanted to bring that up to you. But I would probably personally handle it in that manner, because it's outside of the scope of the gold ribbon piece, but it is a concern as a human being, as a parent and as another camp director, is I may, do some inquiry on that. And sometimes it might be, we ran out of helmets and we wanted to get everybody through, and that would be my thing. As another camp director, you don't want to go through a deposition.
Yeah.
You don't want to go through a lawsuit. Even though kids may not be able to get up there today, still, you also don't want to be responsible for injury and have those kind of collegial conversations. I don't know if that's answering your question, but
no, it does. Thank you.
I think it would be important to document that conversation had happened as well, just to protect COCA-I's liability, to make sure that it was noted and in our report, if an incident did come up and they were sued and they said, oh, we just had our COCA visit and everything was fine, that might be good. And from the medical perspective, I think there could be, similar kinds of things that might come up where you'd be really uncomfortable if you were watching them hand out meds and, 3 campers went by and the nurse who just gave the medicine said, "Was that Timmy?" So if they don't really know who they're giving the meds to or something like that, that would also be something that we would definitely want to point out.
Yeah. Good. Any others? Great questions, folks. Okay, let me pop through here. I think this is the goals of the visit. Once again, visitors to witness camp documentation policies and procedures, and in practice and the delivery of those. And at this point, maybe I think that's where, and I don't know if this is the right point or not, but I'm going to play with it. Let me bring over a document here. I think you guys can all see this. And let me go down here, and within the gold ribbon standards right here, you will actually see that there is something that's called the gold ribbon visit worksheet report. And in this is where, in Sandy, where we were kind of talking about, it lists every single standard. It is notes for you whether or not if it's seen or not seen, even though this is done in documentation as well, but it can be notes for you. And then observed in practice. And so we have some of these blocked out because it's kind of like professional liability coverage. How do you see that in practice besides seeing their documentation? So it's really not something on the visit, but we do want to say, hey, what's the camper intake and application look like? Are they filled out? Let's take a look at a random one. How do they deal with that with regards to staff training, talking to staff, how they were trained? Were they trained in emergency procedures? Were they trained with regards to confidentiality of some of the information medically they might get about campers? Guest and staff orientation, how are they oriented? So see some of these where you can have conversations on site that then can be, that then you can make notes here of saying, yes, okay, I observed that. The other piece that's down here is if there's a visitor or director comment, you can share this with them and say, hey, this is where you had a conversation, or write it on the back with regards to that. But this is something that says, yes, I've seen that, or, well, I saw this, but I didn't see this. And the director's saying, yeah, they didn't do that this week. They did it last week. It's kind of like, that needs to be noted and gone through and done. So this can kind of be a checklist for you to kind of go through and do that. There's also an opportunity down here, and this will be changed in our next rendition, where you have visitors and directors and signing it. So you can use this as a formal kind of, here's what we're going to go around and look at. And this is what we've already seen. And then afterwards, if there are comments, if there are questions, you can write it on the back, on the sides, and you can actually have them sign and date this. This is kind of nice. In the future, we've been asked not to do this because we don't want written record for liability for COCA, but we still want this kind of record to be provided and then going forward. So this can be kind of a document that can kind of help to guide what you're going to be looking at when you go to a camp. Okay. All right, let me get that out of the way. Oh, I'm back. The other piece with regards to the goal, once again, is we don't want the visits and the visitors to be obtrusive. We don't want it to be, oh, it's visitor day at camp, and it's on their schedule. I mean, the intent is for gold ribbon visitors to really be in the background, to have this team that they're working with to go talk to. But they're there to do camp, and we're there to see camp in action. And that's really what it's all about. The other goal of the camp, and this is kind of talks to what Mike talked about earlier, is really this is an opportunity for collaboration between camps and visitors. One of the things we hear more from visitors, how much they learned about new possible practices, maybe programs, maybe training, those kind of things that they saw at another camp. It's like, oh, that's amazing. Can I borrow that? And by the way, if you do that, I ask you to ask that camp to be able to use that information, or could they send it to you? Just because you have purview maybe in their documentation to it, I ask you out of respect and out of, well, I'm just going to say respect. It's just to ask, hey, can I borrow that? I love that from my camp. I don't know any camp that would say, can't borrow our stuff, but ask anyway. But it's also a chance for a camp to ask you as a visitor, hey, what's been your experience in X, Y, and Z? So that's kind of the goals of that. As we talked about a little bit earlier, the on-site visit team, once again, the camp director, I talked about that, and the camp healthcare professional, I should change this. But once again, those might be a little bit different, just make sure it's the right person. And then it's a peer professional, and then it's a medical professional from a volunteer from COCA. And that's really going to be the day and the visit kind of complexion going through. Okay. One of the things just to note, you know, as I said earlier on your communication, to make sure with the director you arrange that the director and the healthcare provider is, the appropriate healthcare provider is going to be on site to visit with you, is really helpful to get that visit done in a timely way and to have those conversations. And so have that, that's why it's on that conversation list. Overview of visit. I always say it's great to go in and just ask for a tour of the camp. Show us your activities, show us what you do. Would love just to see kids having fun and all the different programs. Let them be proud of what they do and show you through those things that are happening. As we've shared this with them, we are going to want to stop through and see the healthcare services, medicine administration, medication administration, also whatever kinds of support services that they might have at that time, how that's done with a lens of saying, this is what you say you do as far as a protocol or how you store medications, how you dispense medications. Want to make sure that those are on the same page. And so you want to do that. We've also let camps know, have conversations, not just with the director, with the main healthcare provider, but have it with counselors, program leaders, other healthcare staff that might be there, and ask them questions. Hey, I love just to go up to counselors and say, hey, what do you love best about camp? What's been your favorite memory so far? And hey, how were you trained? What did you do before camp to make sure that you were ready to be here? And to hear from them, and maybe even ask them, were you trained on emergency procedures? Were you trained about, tell me about, information you might have about campers, about their healthcare. What do you do with that? So kind of lead them through, and we let the camp directors know that this is not to try to catch them doing something wrong, but it's a way for us also as visitors to verify that it's really happening. And that's part of our job in going through. So to expect that. A couple reminders about the visit. These are things we put in, is please know that you're a visitor and not an inspector. This is kind of a lens to use. I think that as a camp operator myself, I know what it's like to get inspections from whether or not it's the California, for me it's California Department of Fire, Health Department, those kind of things. They do have that ability to come in, and if they take a look at something and shut you down, really, we're here as visitors to see what they do compared to what they say they do. And that's really the lens that we want to have. And so for some camp directors, it's kind of hard to kind of say, oh, we got an inspection today from COCA. But I ask for attitude to come in as a visitor, that you're there to visit, to observe, to make notes with regards to this voluntary program called Accreditation. Okay. We ask y'all professional conduct. I mean, this I should go without saying, but this day and age, I never know. And so you're representing COCA, besides representing being a human being on this earth, and your camp and those kind of things. So please just know that your conduct is important when you're dealing with these camps. And once again, in the role of being a visitor for COCA, if anytime during this process you have questions, reach out to us. At the end of this, we got phone numbers that will be for you. Take them with you. We can help you through if there's disagreements or those kind of things. Because, as I said before, confidentiality, lots of times I'm a picture taker because I'm a very visual learner. So I want to take a picture of how they, it's funny, I did this at another camp. And it's like, oh, this is how they take care of their brooms and dustpans. And this is how they organize. I take a picture. But I always like to ask, can I take a picture of that? And also whether or not, if you're doing videos or even documentation, like we said, if you learn things, but just ask for permission and respect their confidentiality. Many of our camps, especially taking pictures, may not allow pictures of campers. It might be their policy to go out. And so you just need to respect that, even if they're in the background. So just be aware of that out of respect and that professionalism. The other thing is yeah, there may be difficult conversations. We talked a little bit about that. I mean, Sandy brought up a great thing. That might also happen with regards to some of our conversations having to do with COCA standards. And it may be, so tell me more about this. And hey, I see this missing. And that's why we try to do a lot of the documentation before the visit so that we can have those conversations ahead of time. And then you're just going and saying, hey, in your policy, it says you do this. Tell me about that and seeing that in camp. And so you're just looking to make sure that they're doing what they say they do. Okay.
If I could add one quick thing,
Please, Mike,
mentioned
please.
the whole concept of being a visitor and not an inspector, and that quality of the relationship needs to go through all of that. And that's what makes it feel unthreatening to the camp. So, you know, when you're talking to a counselor, you don't want them to go back to the camp director and say, it sounded like they were looking for me to say something wrong. You know, you're just having a conversation. It's easy. You talk to them about things you do. They talk to things about you do. And you can ask questions and get answers for what you need to know, but do it in a way that feels friendly and collegial, and not like I'm the boss and I'm telling you what you need to do.
Yeah, and even to the point that if the counselor doesn't mention something that you're looking for, instead of drilling them, and I didn't mean to make it sound that way, you go back to the director and say, hey, I talked to your counselor. They were great. They talked about this and this. Tell me how you do this. They didn't mention this. And it's like, oh yeah, this is what we do. And this is when it's in our training and that kind of a thing. Is a lot better way to deal with that than, as Mike said, that you're drilling a counselor out by the lake or something. Yeah, for sure. And then the other thing, just a reminder, once again, that worksheet and notes and that kind of thing is really helpful for us at the end of the visit. And that's why I wanted to kind of share that through. Questions? All right. The next part we're going to go is talk a little bit about the Gold Ribbon portal. And by the way, some of you maybe have experience with that. There's been some updates. Some of you might be brand new. I will actually, at this point, like to brag about our staff a little bit, is that this portal, we've had people on this program that have been involved in other accreditation programs and have come out and said, oh my gosh, Gold Ribbon has this portal thing down. Very user-friendly, very communicative, very facilitates this collaboration between them all, and is fairly easy. So I think hats off to our staff about that. We're going to do a little bit of orientation here with regards to that. And for that, I'm going to turn this over to Jennifer.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. So as y'all know, the Gold Ribbon Accreditation Program is supported by Care Camps, our largest donor that supports us. So we could not, I mean, this portal is really specially made just for us, and we could not be where we are in the accreditation process if it wasn't for Care Camps to support us, not only with Gold Ribbon, but so many other things. So here we go. So as you know, all the camps have to upload their documents to our online portal. And, you know, this is basically designed to keep their files organized. We've asked all the camps to make sure that their policies and procedure are all digitized so they can upload them to the portal. We have examples of accepted standards and protocols within this portal that they can look at to get an idea of, you know, if they haven't written a policy for something that is being asked for in the standard, they can look at example standards or example policies that other camps have written to help them understand, you know, what's the process in writing something like that. This is where the camps can make comments, ask questions to the visitors. This is where you will make comments and ask questions back to them. We want an open dialogue between the camps and the visitors. So this is where you'll do it in the portal. Also, you'll be able to communicate with, you know, the other team members, not only the camp, but between the peer and the medical visitor as well. This also helps make the process go a lot quicker. And you can actually, at the end of the presentation, I'm going to show you how you can actually send not only an email to the camp, but also to the other visitor. So we've updated this since its use last year, even when we probably were doing a review process. So next screen. So we want you guys to always go to the COCA's website, COCAI.org, to access the portal link. On the left screen there, you see Gold Ribbon Accreditation Program. On the right side there of the home screen, you'll click on that, and then that will take you to the second screen where the word portal is in the menu there. You'll click that, and then it will send you to the next screen, which is where you will sign in with your unique email and password that we will give to you. This is a own Microsoft email. It's not your Camp Sunshine email, but you will get that from me and Callie, and you will type that email in here, and then you'll hit next, and then you'll put the password in, and you'll go to the home screen. Well, oh yeah, it'll ask you if you want to stay signed in or not. You can just push no, and then you'll go to this screen. So let's say you're visiting one camp, then you'll see just that camp's name in that white box there where it says camp test. But if you're already assigned as a visitor to visit multiple camps, then on the drop down blue button there, you'll click on that and you should see the other camps assigned to you. So you pick the camp you want to look at their portal, and you just hit let's go. And okay, we'll go to the next screen so I can kind of talk through it here. So this is the screen you'll probably see first before you get to the first standard. On the left side, you'll see where it says test camp, you'll see the camp's contact information. So this could be the camp director's name and email and phone number, as well as a second contact. Some of the camps have given us one contact, some have two. That information will be listed there. And then over to the right, you know, your name, Dr. Mike, as a medical team member, he'll be listed down there under the medical reviewer. And then if you're a peer visitor, you'll be listed up there with the peer information. And then over back on the left where it says review status. So this is kind of a, the camps can look at this. You can look at this as a visitor. This gives everybody an update of where they are on their standards being accepted or approved. So they're listed out by the standard numbers. And once the peer or medical visitor has checked the box on the information that they've provided, if they believe that it does answer the standard, then they'll check the box for accepted. And then that standard goes into the approved list. For those that have not been checked off yet, they'll be under the pending list. And then the last thing I want to point out, a couple of things on the screen. In the top left, you see all peer and medical, those little radio buttons. If you're the peer visitor for a camp and you just want to look at all of the standards that you're required to review and check off on, you can click the little peer button and it will provide you the list of all of, or take you to all of the standards that are just for the peer visitor, and same for medical. Now, there are some that are required by both the peer and the medical visitor to check off on, but we're trying to make it a little more streamlined and a little easier for both the peer and medical to have specific ones that they look at. And then that all standards jump menu, that if you click the drop down, it has all of the standards listed there, and you can click on any standard number you want to go to. And then over on the right side, you'll click next to go to the first screen, which is standard 1.1. But in all of the screens, it should say update and exit in the red button. So when you're finished reviewing, you'll go to that, and I'll show you what that'll look like in just a minute. But let's go to the next screen. Are there any questions about that? I know that's a lot of information. Okay. Okay, we'll go to the next. Okay, I think I just went through all of that. Okay, so this is standard 1.1. So on the left side of each of this, so the layout of the portal for each of the standards looks the same. The screen looks the same. All of the standards for each screen will be on the left side. And sometimes there'll be a little bar there just to the right of the standard you'll be able to hover your mouse over and scroll down because you'll want to see what the intent is and the written documentation required, or what is being asked in order to satisfy the standard. So as a visitor, you want to be familiar with what exactly it is that you're looking for. So that will be listed there. And then on the right side, the camps, they use the file upload button there to put their documents there. And then in the yellow box, it says disabled for visitors. That's where the camps will write their questions or comments. Or if the standard is just asking for a written explanation, then they can give that written explanation right there in the box. And then up there where it says uploaded files to, you'll see the list of the camp's files. And you also have the opportunity to click the little down arrow to download the document if you want to spend time or you need more time to read through the document. You can easily download it there. Okay, so the bottom box where it's green and it has the little medical checkbox, this is where the visitors will make their comments, their questions, their suggestions, and this is also where you will, if you believe that the information they provided does satisfy the standard, this is where you will check the box for that. Now you'll see this has a date and a time by it. This is great because this will help you, the visitor and the camp, know what was the last comment made by the visitor. It will, help the camp know if they've answered that or not, but they will probably also add an extra comment in the box above. So of course, I should start by telling you, you have to click that add new medical comment first before you go typing away in those boxes. But if you click that, then you'll have access to your box there.
And
then,
Jennifer?
Yes.
Will that box say peer if it's a peer only standard and have both checkboxes if it's for both?
Yes, it will. Thank you, Dr. Mike. Yep. So over here on the left, I just want to point this out before we leave the screen, the view standard examples. The camps can click on that at any time in any of the standards and see an example of a camp's written policy or procedure, and they can click on any of the documents. I believe they're all PDF documents. To help them with that. Okay. All right. So if you hit the exit button, that red button that's in the top right of each of the screens, it'll take you to this page, and this is cool. So you're going to be able to actually send an email. You can click on, let's say that Liz and Ryan are both the peer and the medical visitor for a camp, and I'm the camp. I can choose both of their names and pop them into the to box and then type in an email and send the email. Or if you're the medical visitor and you want to send an email just to the peer visitor, you can do that as well. You'll see also the camp's information listed there, not just the visitors, but it will be the names of the people that are assigned to that camp as the contact and the assigned peer and medical visitor. And if you get to this page and you're not sure if you need to send an email and you hit exit, another screen's gonna pop up and say, are you sure you want to exit? But anyway, it's just a fail-safe thing that we have, but that's kind of how it operates. I think that's all of the screens, right? Okay, last one. So you get an email report. I forgot about this. So if a camp makes an update and then they choose to send the peer and medical visitor an email, it can, by where it says message, that's where they'll type their message will be there. It'll say, I have uploaded new documentation to standard 2.1, can you please log in and check it? And this status of the standards will always be there, and the camp will get a report letting them know, where they are in the process as well. Any questions? I know that is a lot. And if you're not a technical person, it's okay. Don't worry. Just let Callie and I know if you have any questions or problems. But just make sure you're always using the link from the COCA website. And I didn't say this earlier, but the reason being is the portal is being constantly updated and tweaked and fixed on things. And we want to also make sure you have the most recent up-to-date link when you're logging in. So next week, my plan is to get each of you your login information, and you'll also get a list of the camps that need to be visited this summer, and you'll have an opportunity to look at our Google spreadsheet and assign yourself to one or more camps if you can visit more than one. All right, any questions? Great.
All right, I think next going through, we just wanted to do kind of an orientation with regards to the standards themselves, how they're organized, maybe take a look at 2 examples. So if you're not familiar with the standards, please do so. They are also available on the website. After you go to an accreditation program, there's actually a thing right there where you can download the standards as well and view those. So just to let you know, the way that they're kind of organized is a couple things. Number one is they're kind of put into sections. I should say in the beginning, probably the one you want to become most familiar with would be what I would call the definitions. And that's what this looks like. So when we talk about a thing like what's a camper can be, as it says down here, it's a patient, it's a survivor, it's a sibling, it's a parent, a guardian, that kind of thing. Those are all campers. It's not just the patient or the youth patient. If you're talking about what guest means, what a healthcare provider means, all these kind of things. So we try to do this. And so it could be a great reference, not only for our camps and developing those, but then if you're taking a look at a standard and say, does this cover, when it says campers, is it covering all the campers they serve? All of, do they do family camps? So what about parents? Are parents involved in this? They should be. We can ask that question, hey, where's your procedure with regards to your parent campers or caregiver campers with regards to this? So this is just one of those resources I wanted to let you know that are within the standards. The other piece that I want to do is also, we talked about the Gold Ribbon Visitor Report Worksheet. Transparently, we just put it up there. And then we actually get to the standards themselves. As I said, there's 28 of them. They're actually in 6 different categories. They're numbered like 1.1 or 5.2 or those kind of things. And you can also see right here how many standards we have for each one of these categories. So as you can see, it's most heavily weighted. I shouldn't say weighted, but the largest numbers of standards that we have are actually in healthcare. So just to kind of let you know that. The other thing is the standards themselves, as you might have seen on the web portal, that where it lists the standard, that it will actually have writing for the standards, as well as if you get them on paper, you have the actual standard wording. And then there's a thing called an intent statement. This is important to review because it says, what's the intent of this standard? It might go into a little bit more about what might be involved for a camp. Not everything in the intent statement needs to be answered. That's to help give guidance to our camps and also clarification with regards to our visitors as far as what they're looking for. There's also a statement of what a compliance demonstration is. That could be a copy of a policy, a procedure. It could be a conversation. It could be a description that would be had about what their procedure is or their practice is. And just to make that more visual, we've also, if there is written documentation that's needed, there's a written documentation icon. And that way it's just a reminder for everybody, oh, we need documentation. And that's just also a key. Those are the things that we want uploaded ahead of time into the portal. To take a look at an example, here's standard 1.1. This is our newest standard. And just to kind of walk through this a little bit, So the standard actually says, and standards go all the way through this, but it says, this is all the standards. This is, does the member offer a program and facilities that meet organized camp operating standards? There's two ways to comply with this because there's an or right there. So one of them is, are they accredited by a recognized camp association? Well, I think, and so that's a question for the camp to answer. They may be, and that might be, and that is, by the way, the member camp. That's not the facility, it's the member camp. And so that would be, if it's Camp Ronald McDonald is the member camp, it would be our program. It doesn't matter what facility I use, is that my member camp is recognized and we've gone through accreditation. Now, what accreditation do we recognize? I go back again to these definitions just to say it's right here with regards to that could be ACA in the United States, it's the Canadian Camp Association, Ontario Camp Association. There's a couple of different ones in Canada. So it has to be by one of these. If a camp is saying, well, we are accredited, but it's not by one of those during your documentation review, that would be a great thing to bring up to staff and up to the committee. Let us review and see if that would actually comply with that standard that they've been reviewed. The member camp is a member of that. Okay. And that's where, let's see. And as a matter of fact, here's that standard definition. The other part is if they don't have A and they're not accredited, that's totally fine. But then we ask them to provide descriptions of operating procedures that describe the program of organized and supervised activities in the following areas. And there's a long list of these, and we realize this. As far as intent to let you know is that as a gold ribbon program, we have been asked by camps, it's kind of like, do we need to be accredited by another camp association? Can't you guys just do it? And we kind of decided that general camping is not in our wheelhouse. The medical and psychosocial really is, but we refer to other camp associations with regards to the general operation of camp. But we realize that's important for the safety and for the safety of the program that our COCA member camps operate. So once again, we just say, hey, to be accredited is one way to do that. The other is here are some of the topics that would be good for there to be some kind of write-up, some kind of declaration of this is how we answer these certain areas that are important for the safe operation of a camp. And so once again, as visitors, we're not necessarily asking you to go through and judge those, but just to see that for all those apply, do they have some kind of written statement on each one? To help our camps and to help you, we actually have done a couple of things. Number one is, once again, into the standards themselves, we actually have an appendix of standard 1.1 where it goes through each one of these bullet points and has those questions of what they should maybe ask themselves or answer or address if they apply. If they use a camp facility that's accredited, the answer just could be for some of these facility ones. The camp takes care of that and they're accredited by. If they do it, in other words, if they bring up all the counselors and it's the member camp that bring up the counselors, then it would be, so what is the screening on that? So this is safety procedures, including screening, training, skill verification, and those kind of things. And we just ask them to write some kind of narrative about that as far as documentation. And there could be a number of them they need to address. Okay. We also do have a whole training on this we did last year that we recorded that we can provide to you or to camps if they have more questions with regards to 1.1. But really, that's how you take a look at this standard going from credited or, and then they have these. And then it's for a visitor then in documentation to say, which one of these do they address? And it might be, hey, you didn't address transportation safety. How is that handled? And then they can give you an answer on that, either written or the facility that is accredited, or if it's not accredited, the facility takes care of that, but they're not accredited, so this is what happens. Okay, questions about that? Okay. One of the other ones to take a look at, I'm just going to do real quick, is this is actually standard 5.2. 5.2 actually talks about written protocols, treatment protocols. And on this, there's a couple things that I just want to say. Within the standard itself, there might be some wording that you just need to be aware of as a visitor. We're looking for it to be available on site. That would be observable when you're up on site. Is it here? Because it's important for it to be there if they have a nurse coming up for a day, if they have a doctor coming in for a couple days, compared to if they're there all week, you know, that it's there and it's available so that they know about it. Also, is it specific to their camp operation? And by this, I mean, some of our camps have actually, they say, well, yes, we have a protocol on what to do with regards to communicable disease. It's our hospital's protocol. And that's wonderful, but hospitals have different resources and medications as far as expertise, as far as availability than maybe you might have at a campsite. And so, and they might have different communicable diseases that they're dealing with than you would if you're out in the woods, let's say. So it has to be specific for that camp operation. So do they take those and customize them for them is one of those things that we're asking you to take a look at. The other is it approved annually by an independent licensed pediatric oncology healthcare provider with that is familiar with the camp location and healthcare resources. So how do they go about and do that? Who signs off on those? What's their, what is their credentials and are they aware? And that can be described. And going through this, as you can see, there's a list that's down here as far as the standard of all these different points. We're asking you to look for each one of these: communicable disease, chickenpox, shingles, central line care, many of these things that running a pediatric oncology camp that we ought to be prepared for. And so you can go down and say, yes, they do this. If there really isn't a no, because they need to be aware of this. So what are the communicable diseases that they might have for their specific location and for their most common? And this is all under, once again, intent for this. There might be some that are DNA. They might say central line care. We don't, from an eligibility point of view, we don't accept kids to our camps that have central lines for health reasons and for safety and to make sure that that's okay. And if that's so, then they can DNA that. Just as they can DNA if they don't administer IV or oral chemotherapy, that they just, those kids aren't eligible to come to our program because we don't have the capacity from an expertise from a physical location to do that. And that would be transfusions as well. But most of these can be handled otherwise. So that's why there's a couple of DNAs in here, but the others, they should at least be ready to have and have some kind of written, here is our procedure with regards to that. And just to kind of share with that, this is where the intent statement for 5.2 comes in. And as you can see, there's certain things in the dealing with common incidences that occur in camp. Communicable disease, what are the common communicable diseases that might be in their setting? May be very different than if you're in the hospital. I think of head lice. Not that I like to think about head lice, but that's always one that maybe happens in a camp setting, but maybe not happen as much in a hospital. But so what are the ones that has the camp thought about what are the common instances that might happen for them? And then once again, are they customizable for where they are, for their site and all that? So the intent tries to kind of explain some of that as we go through, and then talks about the written treatment protocols need to be there and signed within the last year. Questions about that or comments? I think one of the ones that I know that we were asked that a lot in camps have asked, they said, well, what about COVID? And actually COVID is a communicable disease. So hopefully that might be something that, as I would say, would be a common incident that might occur in their camp setting. And so there should be a policy and a procedure and a practice with regards to what they do that, but we didn't call that out specifically. Okay. All right. So what's next? Take a deep breath. I know it seems like a lot. We appreciate you taking a look and doing this. I think once, I think Lauren Burke said it yesterday or the other day, the best. Like, it looks really overwhelming, but once you get into it, it kind of flows and it's a-okay. But we do appreciate, once again, the time. We ask campers now, we ask camps now to gather all their standards and collect that documentation. And I think, as I think it was Danny that said it, that's kind of our first, one of our first markers is that we'll start reviewing that in April. Before that, be assigned and communicate. But once again, to start reviewing some of that. And once again, if you have questions along the way, let us know. Ask questions, communicate is important. They will be downloading or resubmitting. I say resubmitting in here because there are some camps that have gone through mentoring and that some visitors have looked at their documentation a previous year. They need to review those to make sure they're still current and resubmit those. It's not something that you have to be aware of, but just to know that if you are somebody that helped to mentor a camp, we are asking them to resubmit those. And then once again, communicate. This says with your visitors, it should say with the camp, with regards to all that. And that we're looking forward to a good summer. So this is also the last slide on how to get a hold of all of that. So this will be shared with you as well. And at this point, I guess I would say thoughts, questions, reactions. Are you still awake? Did you get enough coffee?
You can never get enough coffee.
I would say that, except I'm a Diet Coke person, Dr. Mike. Well, great. Really, that's what we have for y'all. And like I said, I would expect for those of you as you go through this process, I would be surprised if there aren't questions. And that's where we want you to reach out, to communicate with us as we go down the road. We're there to support you. You're doing vital work for this association. I think one of the things that you may not be aware of, and I know some of us that are on other levels at other committees maybe, is when we talk to members, we talk to these camps, one of their most highly valued services is accreditation and these standards, and having this collegial experience of helping them to do the best they can. So you guys are vital to that. You guys are the reason that it's not as scary as it could be. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate your commitment to that, because gosh only knows, you could be doing all kinds of things. Dave could be going to Bora Bora, but no, he's going to go visit a camp for us. And I appreciate that, David.
The accommodations are better.
Cool. Well, any
Is
others?
anybody in this group actually getting visited? I'm curious. Somebody's camp getting a
Yes.
visitor this year?
Yes.
I think so.
One step.
One step is, yeah.
Mike
mean,
was
if
our,
somebody was
Mike was our
visited, I
medical
think-
mentor.
Oh, there you
Okay.
go. Cool.
And I would just like to emphasize what Brian said about if you're feeling nervous, that COCA as an organization in general is very collegial, and this group has sort of the all of the most collegial and happy to help type of people, and feel free to reach out to anybody at any time to talk about anything, and we'll all try to help you any way that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. So next week, you'll get a copy of this recording. You'll get Brian's presentation materials. I'll also send the recording from the Standard 1.1 education that we did last year. Thanks for mentioning that, Brian. And also want to make sure everybody has a link to the current Gold Ribbon standards.
Yeah.
And you can, print that off. It's a PDF from the website.
And with regards to that too is one last final request is, as you go through this process, if there are things you're thinking, what would make this easier, Brian? What would make this even better, COCA? Please let us know. A matter of fact, we're sitting with current feedback from last year, making edits to our standards that are mostly clarifications, mostly ways to help us do that better, that we're reviewing right now, that will be out for next November. But we're always looking to improve this, the portal, the standards, the process. So your input is so valuable. Don't think that it's kind of like, hey, I'll make this suggestion and who knows if it's ever going to go anywhere. It does. And we ask that from the camps as well. So I ask you, help us be better as you go through this process, whether or not if it's with your new eyes or if it's returning eyes. Help us out with that. We'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm happy to say there's 10 minutes of your life back. Because we ended early. Yay!
Thanks for putting all this together.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank
Any
you,
last
Ben.
questions? I didn't want to kick everybody off. Any last questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Wherever you are, have a good, safe, happy rest of your day.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good weekend, everyone.
Bye.
Bye all.
See you.
Bam.
Hey.
Oh, recording off.
Oh, you can stop recording.
I actually just did.
Okay.
Did you or no?